I'm Joshua, I'm 34 years old, and yesterday morning I stood outside a boardroom door and listened to my own father tell 20 of the most powerful investors in the state that I was losing my mind. Before I tell you about the recording that sent two people to federal prison and destroyed a 40-year dynasty, let me know where you guys are watching from in the comments. I'm reading all of them tonight.
My door opened without a knock. It was Gabriel, our CFO. Gabriel is a good man, the kind of guy who wears suspenders not because it's fashion, but because he genuinely trusts them more than belts. He's been with the company for 30 years. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Joshua," he said. His voice was trembling. "We have a problem." I didn't look up from my screen immediately. "Is it the union negotiations in Detroit? Tell them we can go up to 3% on the salary increase, but not 4. "It's not the union," Gabriel said. He walked over and closed the door behind him, locking it. That made me look up. Gabriel never locked doors. "It's the pension fund." I took off my glasses. "What about it?" "It's light," he whispered. "Light? Like market fluctuations? The whole sector is down this quarter, Gabriel, that's to be expected." "No," Gabriel said, placing a stack of papers on my desk. His hands were shaking so bad the papers rattled against the wood. "Not market fluctuations. Withdrawals. Unauthorized wire transfers. Massive ones." I pulled the papers toward me. My eyes scanned the columns. Date. Amount. Recipient. September 12th, $2.5 million. September 20th, $4 million. October 1st, $8.5 million. $15 million. Gone in less than a month. "Where did this go?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "This is employee retirement money, Gabriel. This is federal territory. If this is missing, we aren't just looking at fines. We're looking at prison." Gabriel pointed to the routing number on the final transfer. I traced the shell company. It's registered in the Caymans. But the signatory, the IP address used to authorize the transfer. He didn't want to say it. He looked sick. "Say it," I commanded. "It came from the chairman's private terminal," Gabriel said, looking at the floor. "And the beneficiary account. I called a friend at the receiving bank. He owed me a favor." He confirmed the account holder. "Mason," I said. It wasn't a question. Gabriel nodded. "Mason." I sat back in my chair, the leather creaking in the silence. My brother, my father, they had raided the employee pension fund, the nest eggs of 3,000 loyal workers, to funnel $15 million to my brother. "Why?" I asked, mostly to myself. "Mason is reckless, but he's not. He doesn't need $15 million of liquid cash overnight." "I did some digging," Gabriel said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "There are rumors. Mason got involved with some bad people in Vegas. Not casino bad, private game bad. High-interest private lenders. Loan sharks. My brother had gambled away a fortune he didn't even have yet. And my father was gutting the company to save his golden child from getting his legs broken." "Does anyone else know?" I asked. "Just us. And them." "Make copies," I said, standing up. I grabbed my car keys, the fob to my Porsche Panamera. "Make digital copies on an external drive. Don't save anything to the cloud. Take the physical files home with you. Do not leave them in this building." "Joshua, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to dinner," I said, my jaw tight. "Mom invited me over for a family celebration tonight. She said they wanted to toast to my upcoming CEO appointment." Gabriel looked at me with pity. "Joshua, you know they aren't going to give you that job. Not now. If they admit you're CEO, you get full access to the audit logs. They can't let you see what I just showed you." "I know," I said. "I want to see if they can look me in the eye while they stab me in the back." I drove to my parents' estate in the Porsche. It's a nice car, reliable, understated gray. Fits me. In the driveway, blocking the main entrance, was Elijah's Rolls-Royce Phantom and Mason's ridiculous canary yellow Lamborghini Aventador. That car always looked like a desperate scream for attention, much like Mason himself. The house was a sprawling mansion that looked more like a museum than a home. I walked in and the performance began immediately. Joshua, my mother, Victoria, swept toward me in a silk gown, a glass of wine already in her hand. She kissed my cheek, but her eyes were cold, scanning my face for what? Suspicion? We were just waiting for you. Darling, you look tired. Doesn't he look tired, Elijah? My father emerged from the library, swirling a tumbler of scotch. He works too hard, Victoria. That's his problem. Always grinding away. Never stops to smell the roses. Someone has to work, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Someone has to make sure the dividends on that Rolls-Royce get paid. Elijah's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. Always the martyr, son. Come, sit, let's eat. Dinner was a surreal nightmare. They talked about the weather. They talked about the upcoming gala. Mason sat across from me, looking pale and sweaty despite his best efforts to act arrogant. He kept checking his phone under the table. So, I said, cutting into my steak, the board meeting is in 2 days. The vote for the CEO position. Are we still on track? The room went silent. The only sound was the clinking of silverware. About that, Elijah said, setting down his fork. Your mother and I have been talking. We're worried about you, Joshua. You've been erratic lately. Erratic? I raised an eyebrow. I've closed 3 major deals in the last month. Stock is up 12%. I'm the most stable thing in this family. See, Mason piped up, his voice cracking. So defensive. That's what Dr. Adrian said. Paranoid defensiveness. Dr. Adrian? I looked at my mother. You're discussing me with the family psychiatrist? I haven't seen Dr. Adrian since I was 12. We just consulted him, Mom said, reaching for the wine bottle. Here, have some wine, Joshua. It's a 1982 Bordeaux. Your favorite. You need to relax. She poured the wine. Her hand hovered over the glass a fraction of a second too long. There was a slight tremor in her wrist. I watched the dark red liquid swirl in the crystal. Drink up, Mason urged. Seriously, it'll help you sleep. I looked at the wine. Then I looked at my family. My father, the thief. My brother, the gambler. My mother, the enabler. They weren't celebrating my promotion. They were executing me. I'm driving, I said, pushing the glass away. I'll stick to water. The disappointment on my mother's face was instant and terrifying. Just a sip, she pressed. For a toast. No, I said firmly. I stood up. I have to go. I have an early morning. Big audits coming up. You know how thorough those forensic accountants can be. I dropped the word forensic like a grenade and watched it explode. Mason dropped his fork. Elijah stiffened. What audits? Elijah snapped. We didn't authorize any external audits. Just standard procedure for the CEO transition. I lied. We want to make sure the inheritance of the corporate structure is clean. Right, Dad? I walked out. I didn't drink the wine, but as I walked to my car, I poured the water from my glass into a potted plant by the door. I wouldn't put it past them to drug the water too. As I drove away, I saw them through the window. They were arguing. Frantic. That night, lying in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, I realized the truth. They weren't just going to pass me over for the promotion. They needed me gone. Completely. If I stayed, I would find the money. If I found the money, they went to jail. They had to destroy me. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. Emergency board meeting called for Thursday, 9 a.m. Agenda: removal of COO due to medical incapacity. They have a file, Joshua. They have signatures. Don't come alone. It was Julian, my grandfather's oldest friend and the only board member with a soul. I sat up in bed. Medical incapacity. They were going to declare me crazy. They were going to use a fake psychiatric evaluation to bypass the shareholder vote and strip me of my position. It was a career homicide. I didn't sleep. I got up, showered, and put on my suit. I went to my safe and pulled out the recorder I used for depositions. If they wanted a show, I would give them a show. Driving to the office the next morning, passing the sleek glass buildings of the financial district, I felt the weight of the last decade crushing down on me. It wasn't just the fear of losing my job. It was the crushing realization of how much of my life I had wasted trying to impress people who were incapable of loving me. My entire life had been a competition I didn't know was rigged. I remember when I was 18. It was the summer before college. I had been accepted to Wharton early admission. I had worked 2 summers at the warehouse, loading trucks in 100-degree heat because Elijah said I needed to learn the value of $1. I drove a beat-up Honda Civic I bought with my own wages. That same summer, Mason turned 18. He barely graduated high school. His GPA was a disaster, salvaged only by a massive donation Elijah made to a private prep school. For his birthday, Elijah bought him a Ferrari. Not a used one. A brand new, red Ferrari. He needs a confidence boost, my mother had said when I stared at the car in the driveway, clutching the keys to my Honda. You're so naturally capable, Joshua. You don't need things like this. Mason. He needs to feel special. 2 weeks later, Mason wrapped that Ferrari around a telephone pole in the Hamptons while high on prescription pills. He walked away without a scratch. The car was totaled. And who did Elijah call? Not the police. Not an ambulance. He called the family lawyer to hush it up, and then he called me. Go pick up your brother, he had ordered. And handle the tow truck. Don't let anyone take pictures. I did it. I always did it. I spent my 19th birthday in a police station filling out reports so Mason wouldn't have a record. I spent my graduation from Wharton skipping the party to fly home and help Elijah negotiate a union strike he had provoked. 5 years ago was the turning point. The company, Sterling Logistics, was bleeding. Elijah had made a series of terrible investments in crypto and offshore real estate. We were weeks away from bankruptcy. I was working at a top firm in New York, making my own name, building my own salary and reputation. Elijah called me weeping. Actually weeping. Save the legacy, son, he begged. For your grandfather. So I came back. I took a pay cut. I worked 18-hour days for 5 years straight. I streamlined operations. I cut the dead weight. I negotiated new contracts. I saved the company. I brought us back from the brink and tripled our valuation. And all the while, Mason floated through the hallways, holding the title of VP of Strategic Relationships, which meant he took clients to strip clubs and expensed the bills to the company. I tolerated it. I told myself it was for the family. I told myself that one day they would see. They would hand me the keys and say, "Thank you, Joshua. You did it." How stupid was I? I pulled my Porsche into the underground garage of the Sterling building. It was Wednesday, the day before the ambush. I needed to act fast. I met Gabriel in the server room in the basement. It was cold, humming with the sound of 1,000 hard drives. "Did you get the emails?" I asked. Gabriel looked pale. He handed me a tablet. "It's worse than we thought, Joshua. It's not just the money. Look at this correspondence with Dr. Adrian." I scrolled through the emails. From Elijah Sterling to Dr. Adrian Hale. Subject: urgent concern regarding Joshua Adrian. We need to expedite the paperwork. The aggression is getting worse. We need a retroactive diagnosis of bipolar disorder with psychotic features. Dates need to go back at least 6 months. We need to show a pattern of instability to justify invoking the incapacity clause in the bylaws. From Dr. Adrian Hale to Elijah Sterling. Subject: urgent concern. I can have the file ready by Thursday morning. It will cost you. The risk to my license is substantial. $500K, wired to the usual account. From Elijah Sterling to Dr. Adrian Hale. Subject: urgent concern. Done. Just make sure it's watertight. We need to get him committed for at least 72 hours. That gives us enough time to restructure the board and liquidate the assets we discussed. I lowered the tablet. My hand was trembling now, not from fear, but from a rage so pure it felt like it was burning a hole in my stomach. They want to commit me, I whispered. They want to lock me in a psych ward so they can sell off the company assets to pay Mason's debts. If they commit you, Gabriel said, his voice grim, you lose your voting rights. The bylaws are clear. Any executive deemed medically incapacitated is suspended immediately. They are going to gaslight me out of my own life, I said. I looked at the server racks. Gabriel, I need access to the security cameras in the executive suite, specifically my father's office. Does he still have that voice-activated system for his dictations? Yes, Gabriel said, but it's encrypted. Crack it, I said, or find someone who can. I need audio. I need them saying it out loud. Emails can be forged. Dr. Adrian can claim he was hacked. I need their voices. I can't crack that by tomorrow, Gabriel said. It's military grade. I ran a hand through my hair. I was trapped. I had evidence of embezzlement, but they had a doctor ready to say I was crazy. If I walked into that meeting and waved these papers around, Elijah would just shake his head and say, see? Paranoia. He's concocting conspiracies. The board trusts Elijah. He's the charismatic patriarch. I'm just the number cruncher. My phone buzzed again. Julian. Meet me. 30 minutes. The old diner on 4th. I looked at Gabriel. Keep digging. Find out where that 15 million went specifically. If we can prove it went to pay off a criminal debt, not even Dr. Adrian can save them. I left the building through the service exit. I couldn't risk running into Mason. The diner was a relic from the 50s, smelling of grease and old coffee. Julian was sitting in a back booth. He was 70 years old, wearing a tweed jacket that cost more than my car, but eating a $2 grilled cheese. He didn't smile when I sat down. You're walking into a slaughter, kid, Julian said. I know about the money, Julian. The pension fund. Julian nodded slowly. I suspected. The numbers didn't add up last quarter. But it's not just the money. It's the custody of the company. Elijah is terrified of you. Terrified? He treats me like a nuisance. He treats you like a nuisance because he knows you're the only one who sees him for what he is. A fraud. If you become CEO, you'll see everything. The gambling, the bribes, the mismanagement. He has to kill your credibility to survive. Julian slid a small black box across the table. What is this? A high-fidelity wire, Julian said. Battery life of 12 hours. Omnidirectional microphone. It picks up a whisper from 20 feet away. You want me to wear a wire? I want you to get a confession, Julian said, his eyes hard. Tomorrow morning, before the meeting starts, go to your father. Play the victim. Act broken. Make them feel safe. Arrogance makes people sloppy, Joshua. Let them gloat. And when they gloat, they'll tell you the truth. I took the device. Felt heavy in my hand. Why are you helping me? I asked. You've been friends with Elijah for 40 years. Julian took a sip of his coffee. I was friends with your grandfather. He was a good man. He built this company to feed families, not to buy Lamborghinis for spoiled brats. Elijah has forgotten who he serves. It's time he was reminded. I drove home, the wire in my pocket. I had a plan. But plans have a way of falling apart when family is involved. As I pulled into the parking garage of my apartment building, I saw it. The yellow Lamborghini, parked right in my spot. Mason was leaning against it, smoking a cigarette. He looked wired, his eyes darting around. I rolled down my window. Move the car, Mason. He flicked the cigarette at my windshield. We need to talk, little brother. Dad's worried you're going to do something stupid tomorrow. I'm just going to a meeting, Mason. He walked over to my door. I could smell the alcohol on his breath. Don't bother. Seriously. Just call in sick. Check yourself into a spa or something. Dad's willing to give you a nice severance package. A monthly salary for doing nothing. Just walk away. Is that what you want? I asked. You want me to walk away so you can bankrupt the company in 6 months? Mason laughed. A harsh, jagged sound. You think you're so smart. You think you're the savior. But nobody likes you, Josh. You're boring. You're a buzzkill. Dad hates you. Mom tolerates you. The investors, they think you're a robot. I'm the face. I'm the charm. That's what a CEO is. Charm doesn't pay the payroll, Mason. He leaned in close, his face twisting into a sneer. Tomorrow you're done. We have the doctor. We have the board. You're going to be nothing. And I'm going to be sitting in that corner office. He patted my cheek, condescendingly. Sleep tight, psycho. He got in his car and roared away, the engine echoing like a gunshot in the concrete garage. I sat there for a long time. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. Sleep tight, psycho. I didn't sleep tight. I didn't sleep at all. I spent the night taping the wire to my chest, testing the signal, and rehearsing my own destruction. Thursday morning dawned gray and oppressive. The sky was the color of wet concrete, hanging low over the city. I looked in the mirror. Dark circles under my eyes. Perfect. I needed to look tired. I needed to look like a man on the edge of a breakdown. I chose my suit carefully. Navy blue. Conservative. But I left the top button of my shirt undone. My tie was slightly crooked. Subtle details. The visual language of a man losing his grip. I arrived at Sterling Logistics at 8:15 a.m. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. I knew Elijah and Mason would be there early, pre-gaming their victory in Elijah's office. I walked past the reception. The receptionist, Sarah, looked at me with strange pity. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice soft. Your father is asking for you in his office." "Thank you, Sarah." I walked down the long corridor lined with portraits of the company's history. There was my grandfather, stern and proud. There was Elijah, smiling his politician smile. And at the end, a blank space where the next CEO's portrait would go. I reached Elijah's office. I reached into my shirt and pressed the small button on the device taped to my chest. One vibrational buzz. Recording. I knocked and entered. They were there. The unholy trinity. Elijah sat behind the massive oak desk. Victoria was on the leather sofa, sipping an espresso. Mason was pacing by the window, looking out at the city he thought he already owned. "Joshua," Elijah said, not looking up from his papers. "You're early." "I wanted to talk," I said, letting my voice waver slightly. I slumped my shoulders, adopting a posture of defeat. "Before the meeting. Before whatever happens today." Victoria stood up and walked over to me. "Oh, honey. You look exhausted. Have you been sleeping?" "No," I admitted. "I haven't. I feel like everything is closing in on me." Mason stopped pacing. He looked at Elijah. I saw the smirk exchanged between them. "It's working," they were thinking. "He's cracking." "We know, son," Elijah said, his voice dripping with faux sympathy. "That's why we're doing this. We want to help you." "Help me?" I asked, stepping closer to the desk. "By firing me?" "Not firing," Elijah corrected. "Medical leave. Indefinite medical leave. With a generous stipend. You can go to that facility in Switzerland. The one by the lake. Rest. Recuperate." "And the company?" I asked. "Who runs the company?" "Mason will step in as interim CEO," Victoria said, beaming at her golden boy. "He's ready, Joshua. He has so much vision." "Vision," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling the pension fund withdrawals?" The room froze. The air was suddenly sucked out of the space. Elijah stood up slowly. "I don't know what you're talking about." $15 million, Dad," I said, keeping my voice low, pleading. "I saw the transfers. The Cayman accounts. If the SEC sees that, if the lawyer for the union sees that." "You see," Mason shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Paranoia. He's imagining things. There is no money missing." "Stop it," Elijah snapped at Mason. He walked around the desk and stood right in front of me. He looked into my eyes, searching for the strength he usually saw there. He found only the exhaustion I was projecting. He decided I was beaten. He decided it was safe to drop the mask. "Listen to me, Joshua," Elijah said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. The microphone on my chest was 6 inches from his mouth. "You are going to walk into that boardroom. You are going to sit there quietly while Dr. Adrian presents his findings. And then you are going to thank the board for their understanding. And if I don't? Elijah smiled. It was a shark smile. Then we release the other file. The one about the harassment complaints we've fabricated. The one about you misusing company funds. We will bury you, Joshua. You won't just lose your job. You'll be unhireable. You'll be a pariah. Why? I asked, letting a real tear of frustration, well up. Why are you doing this? I saved this company. I did everything you asked. Because you're not one of us? Mason sneered, walking over. You're a worker bee, Josh. You're boring. You think rules matter. You think ethics matter. We needed that money. I was in a jam. A serious jam. These guys, they don't sue, Josh. They break kneecaps. So you stole from the employees to pay off Mason's gambling debts? I asked, clarifying for the recording. We borrowed it, Elijah said dismissively. Once Mason is CEO, we'll sell the R&D division to that Chinese firm. We'll put the money back before anyone notices. It's a bridge loan, Joshua. That's business. And Dr. Adrian? I asked. The psychiatric report? An insurance policy, Victoria said, checking her nails. Adrian is an old friend. He knows how to write a compelling narrative. Bipolar disorder. Delusions of grandeur. Fits, doesn't it? You've always been so intense. I looked at them, my family, confessing to embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy, all within 3 minutes because they thought I was a broken man. So that's the plan, I said softly. Sell R&D. Gut the future of the company to cover the past. It's the only way, Elijah said. Now fix your tie. You look like a slob. The meeting starts in 10 minutes. He reached out and straightened my tie. His hand brushed against the hard plastic lump of the wire taped to my chest. My heart stopped. Elijah frowned. He patted my chest again. What is? He ripped my jacket open. Time seemed to slow down. The sound of the Velcro ripping was deafening. Elijah stared at the black device taped to my shirt. The red light blinked at him like a demonic eye. You little rat, Elijah whispered. He lunged for me. I didn't think. Instinct took over. I shoved him back. He stumbled into his desk. Mason, get it, Elijah screamed. He's wearing a wire. Mason charged at me like a linebacker. But Mason was slow, soft from years of alcohol and easy living. I sidestepped him. He crashed into the coffee table, shattering the glass. Victoria screamed. I turned and ran. I burst out of the office into the hallway. Security! Elijah was bellowing from behind me. Stop him! Security! I sprinted down the corridor. The boardroom was at the other end. That was my goal. I needed to get into that room. I needed to plug this device into the PA system. 2 security guards appeared from the elevator bank. They looked confused. Mr. Sterling? One asked. My father is having an episode. I shouted, not slowing down. Call the paramedics. I need to get the board. They hesitated. That split second was all I needed. I pushed past them. I could hear Mason running behind me, his footsteps heavy. Stop him. He attacked Dad. I reached the double doors of the boardroom. I didn't stop to smooth my hair. I didn't stop to catch my breath. I slammed the doors open. The sound of the heavy oak doors slamming against the walls echoed like a gunshot. 20 heads turned instantly. The long mahogany table was full. The board of directors, the major shareholders, the sharks, men and women who controlled billions of dollars of capital. At the head of the table, Uncle David looked startled, his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Next to him sat Julian, his face unreadable. Ryan and Luke, the venture capital brothers who held 15% of the stock, looked annoyed at the interruption. I stood in the doorway, chest heaving. My jacket was torn. My tie was askew. I looked exactly like the maniac my father was about to claim I was. Joshua, Uncle David asked, what is the meaning of this? Before I could answer, Elijah and Mason burst into the room behind me. Elijah was red-faced, panting. Mason was bleeding from a small cut on his forehead where he'd hit the coffee table. "Grab him," Elijah shouted to the security guards who were now trailing them. "He assaulted me. He's having a psychotic break." "Stop," I yelled. My voice was loud, commanding. It was the voice I used to negotiate with steel unions. Carried weight. "Nobody touch me." The security guards froze. They looked from the chairman to the COO. Confusion reigned. "I apologize for the entrance," I said, straightening my jacket, though it was ripped. "But there is urgent business that precedes the agenda." "There is no business," Elijah snarled, moving to block me from the table. "Gentlemen, I apologize. My son is... he is unwell, as we feared. Look at him. He's violent. He just attacked me in my office." Victoria came in then, playing her part to the hilt. She rushed to Elijah, checking him for imaginary wounds. "He pushed him. My own son pushed his father." "Oh, Joshua, what have you done?" The room murmured. I saw the doubt in their eyes. Ryan leaned over to Luke and whispered something. They were buying it. The visual was too strong. The torn clothes, the sweat, the shouting. "This meeting is adjourned," Elijah declared. "Security, escort Joshua to the clinic. Dr. Adrian is waiting." "No," I said. I walked to the empty chair at the foot of the table, the presenter's chair. "The meeting is not adjourned. I am a shareholder and a sitting executive. I have the floor." "You have nothing," Mason spat. "You're fired, Joshua. Get out." Julian cleared his throat. It was a dry, sharp sound that cut through the chaos. "The bylaws," Julian said softly, "state that any executive has the right to defend themselves against removal before a vote. Let the boy speak, Elijah. Unless you have something to hide." Elijah froze. He looked at Julian with betrayal. Then he looked at the other board members. He saw curiosity. He couldn't force me out physically without looking like a tyrant. "Fine," Elijah spat. "Speak. Show them how crazy you are. Dig your own grave." He sat down at the head of the table, crossing his arms. Mason stood behind him, wiping blood from his forehead, glaring at me with pure hatred. I walked to the center of the room. I placed the small black device on the polished wood table. I plugged the auxiliary cable from the room's AV system into the jack. "For the last 5 years," I began, my voice steadying, "I have dedicated my life to this company. I have sacrificed my marriage. I wasn't married, but the metaphor landed. My time and my sanity to build value for everyone in this room." "We know your resume, Joshua," Luke interrupted, checking his Rolex. "Get to the point. Your father says you're medically unfit." "My father," I said, looking Elijah in the eye, "is a liar," gasped. "And not just a liar," I continued, "a thief." "That's libel," Mason shouted. "I'll sue you. I have here," I tapped the device, "a recording taken 10 minutes ago in the chairman's office. In this recording, you will hear 3 things. 1. An admission of embezzling $15 million from the employee pension fund. 2. An admission of a conspiracy to commit insurance fraud by selling the R&D division. And 3. An admission of bribing a medical professional to falsify my health records." The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Elijah's face went from red to a terrifying shade of gray. He lunged for the device. "Turn it off. It's illegal. It's inadmissible." "Sit down, Elijah." Uncle David slammed his hand on the table. It was the first time I'd ever seen my uncle show a spine. "If what he says is true, sit down." Elijah sank back into his chair. He looked like a trapped animal. "Play it," Julian said. I pressed play. Static. Then, crystal clear, Elijah's voice filled the boardroom. "We know, son. That's why we're doing this. We want to help you." My voice. "Help me? By firing me?" Elijah. "Not firing. Medical leave. Mason will step in as interim CEO." I looked at the investors. They were leaning in. My voice on the tape. "Vision. Is that what we're calling the pension fund withdrawals?" Silence on the tape. Then Elijah, I don't know what you're talking about. My voice, $15 million, Dad. If the SEC sees that. Then Mason's voice, loud and clear. You see? Paranoia. He's imagining things. There is no money missing. I watched Ryan and Luke. Their expressions shifted from annoyance to concern. Then came the kill shot. Mason on the tape. We needed that money. I was in a jam. A serious jam. These guys, they don't sue Josh. They break kneecaps. My voice. So you stole from the employees to pay off Mason's gambling debts? Elijah's voice, dismissive and arrogant. We borrowed it. Once Mason is CEO, we'll sell the R&D division to that Chinese firm. We'll put the money back before anyone notices. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. It went from a boardroom to a crime scene. Then the final nail in the coffin. Victoria's voice. Adrian is an old friend. He knows how to write a compelling narrative. Bipolar disorder. Delusions of grandeur. I stopped the recording. I looked up. Elijah was staring at the table, his hands trembling. Victoria was weeping silently, but this time, the tears were real. Mason was backing away toward the door. Mason, Julian said, his voice like ice. Stay where you are. Security has already locked the elevators. I looked at my father. You wanted to declare me incompetent, Dad. You wanted to take my life away. All to cover up the fact that you raised a criminal and became one yourself. Elijah looked up. His eyes were dead. I did it for the family, Joshua. You wouldn't understand loyalty. Loyalty? I laughed. It was a hollow, painful sound. You drugged my wine. You hired a doctor to institutionalize me. That's not loyalty. That's a hit job. So, I turned to the board. You have heard the tape. You have two choices. You can vote to remove me, in which case I take this recording to the FBI and the Wall Street Journal immediately. Or, Uncle David asked. Or you remove them. I pointed at my father and brother. Effective immediately. And you name me CEO. Today. Now. And the money? Luke asked sharply. The 15 million? We seized their assets, I said. The houses, the cars, the offshore accounts. We make the pension fund whole. We handle this internally before the feds tear us apart. The board members looked at each other. It wasn't a hard decision. It was business. The vote was unanimous. Took less than 3 minutes. Motion to remove Elijah Sterling as chairman and Mason Sterling as VP. Effective immediately. For cause, Julian proposed. Seconded, Uncle David said, not looking at his brother. All in favor? Every hand went up. Even Elijah's old golf buddies raised their hands. Rats deserting a sinking ship. Motion to appoint Joshua Sterling as CEO, Julian continued. Seconded. Every hand went up. I stood there, the adrenaline beginning to fade, replaced by a deep, aching exhaustion. I was CEO. I had won. But looking at the wreckage of my family across the table, it didn't feel like a victory. Felt like an amputation. Security, I said. My first order as CEO. Please escort the former chairman and Mr. Sterling off the premises. Their access badges are to be deactivated immediately. 2 burly guards moved toward Elijah. You can't do this, Elijah sputtered, clinging to his chair. I built this table. I built this room. You ungrateful. Up, sir, the guard said, grabbing Elijah's arm. Elijah stood up, shaking off the guard. He adjusted his suit jacket, trying to summon one last shred of dignity. He looked at me. You'll fail, he spat. You don't have the stomach for the big chair, Joshua. You're soft. I just took down the 3 people I loved most in the world to save this company, I said quietly. Does that look soft to you? Elijah didn't answer. He turned and walked out, his head held high, delusional to the end. Mason wasn't so dignified. As the guards approached him, he panicked. He knew what awaited him outside. The loan sharks, the debts. Without the company protection, he was a dead man walking. Josh, wait, Mason pleaded, grabbing my sleeve. You can't let them kick me out. You heard the tape. They'll kill me, Josh. Please. I'm your brother. I looked at his hand on my arm. The same hand that had patted my cheek the night before and called me a psycho. You stopped being my brother when you agreed to lock me in a cage, Mason, I said. I pulled my arm away. Get him out of here. Mason was dragging his feet, sobbing, begging as they hauled him through the doors. Mom! Mom! Do something. Victoria sat on the sofa in the corner, freezing. She hadn't moved. She stared at me with an expression of pure horror. Not because of what I did, but because she realized she had bet on the wrong horse. Joshua, she whispered, we can fix this. We can. Go home, Mother, I said. Pack your things. The lawyers will be in touch about the estate seizure. She left without another word. When the doors closed, the room was silent. All right, I said, turning to the board. I didn't sit down. I felt I needed to stand. We have a lot of work to do. First, I want a full forensic audit of every transaction in the last 24 months. Second, we need to draft a statement for the employees reassuring them about the pension fund. Third, I looked at Julian. He gave me a small, proud nod. Third, I need a coffee. The tension broke. A few nervous chuckles. I spent the next 6 hours in crisis management mode. I was in my element. Strategy, execution, damage control. It was easier to deal with balance sheets than with the fact that I was now an orphan in every way that mattered. At 5 p.m., I walked into the CEO's office, my father's old office. It still smelled like his cologne, sandalwood and expensive scotch. I walked over to the desk. His nameplate was still there. Elijah Sterling, Chairman. I picked it up and dropped it into the trash can. My phone rang. It was Gabriel. It's done, Gabriel said. We've frozen their personal accounts. The seizures are underway. The Rolls-Royce is being towed as we speak. And Joshua, the police are at Mason's penthouse. Turns out the pension theft wasn't his only legal issue. He's in custody. Good, I said. And the funds? We recovered about $8 million from the offshore accounts. The rest, we'll have to liquidate their real estate to cover it. But the employees won't lose a dime. Thank you, Gabriel. You're the CFO now. Permanently. Thanks, boss. I hung up. I walked to the window. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the city. I looked down at the parking lot. I saw a tow truck hooking up the yellow Lamborghini. It looked like a toy from up here. A broken, discarded toy. This is the moment that changed everything. The moment I realized that blood might be thicker than water, but it's also a lot harder to clean up when it spills. I had taken back control. I had saved the legacy. But the silence in that office was deafening. This is the moment that changes everything, when I finally took back control of my life. Thank you for being patient with me this far. You are amazing. Please help me by liking the video and commenting 1 below, so I know you've journeyed with me to this point. This not only helps more people find this story, but it also lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to continue sharing the rest of this journey. The aftermath wasn't a clean break. It was a war of attrition. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, depositions, and public scrutiny. The story leaked, of course. Succession war at Sterling Logistics. Son ousts father in boardroom coup. I didn't hide from it. I controlled the narrative. I gave an exclusive interview where I framed it strictly as a fiduciary matter. I didn't mention the drugs, the gambling, or the fake psych evaluation. I kept it professional. I protected the company name even as I destroyed the family name. Elijah didn't go quietly. He tried to sue for wrongful termination. He tried to rally his old cronies. But without the company checkbook, his power evaporated. His friends stopped returning his calls. The country club revoked his membership when the fraud allegations hit the papers. He was a king without a kingdom. I remember the day the movers came to the estate. The board had authorized the seizure of the family mansion to repay the pension fund. I drove out there to oversee it. I didn't have to, But I needed closure. The house was chaotic. Movers were packing up paintings, statues, furniture. I found my mother in the sunroom. She was sitting on a plastic garden chair, the only furniture left in the room. She was smoking a cigarette, something she hadn't done in 20 years. "You came to gloat?" she asked, not looking at me. "I came to make sure you have somewhere to go," I said. "I rented a condo for you, in the city. It's paid up for a year." She laughed bitterly. "A condo? After this?" She gestured to the sprawling grounds. "It's more than you deserve," I said. "You were going to let them lock me away, Mom. You were going to let Adrian drug me into a stupor." She turned to me, her eyes flashing with anger. "I was trying to save the family. Mason is fragile. He couldn't survive in the real world. You were always strong. I thought you could handle it. I thought you would understand." "Understand?" I shook my head, marveling at her delusion. "You sacrificed the strong child to save the weak one, and now you've lost both." "I haven't lost Mason," she said defiantly. "I visit him every week. He needs me." "He needs a lawyer," I said, "and a rehab facility. He's looking at 10 years, Mom. Minimum." "Because of you," she screamed. "You could have just paid the money. You could have just signed the papers. Why did you have to be so righteous?" "Because someone had to be," I said. I put the key to the condo on the table next to her. "Goodbye, Victoria," I said. I couldn't call her Mom anymore. "If you walk out that door," she hissed, "you are dead to me." I stopped. I looked back at her. This small, bitter woman sitting in an empty room, surrounded by the ghosts of her own greed. "I was dead to you the moment I walked into the boardroom," I said. "Now I'm just buried." I walked out. I got into my Porsche. I drove away and I didn't look back. The next stop was the county jail. I didn't want to go. Caleb, my personal attorney, advised against it. "There's nothing to gain, Joshua," he had said. "Let the system handle them." But I needed to see him. Elijah. The visiting room was stark, smelling of bleach and despair. Elijah sat behind the plexiglass. He looked 20 years older. His hair was messy. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that clashed horribly with his pale skin. He picked up the phone. "You look good," he sneered. "Suit fits better now that you're the boss." "I came to tell you that the company is safe," I said. "Stock is up. We settled with the union. The pension fund is replenished." "I don't care," Elijah said. "You don't care." I leaned in. "It's your life's work. It's Grandpa's legacy. It was my property," Elijah shouted, slamming his fist against the glass. "Mine, to do with as I pleased. I made you. I could unmake you. You tried," I said calmly. "And you failed." Elijah sat back, panting. He looked at me with a mix of hatred and grudging respect. No, not respect. Fear. "Mason is in protective custody," I said. "He's testifying against his loan sharks in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's terrified, Elijah. He's crying himself to sleep every night." "He's weak," Elijah muttered. "I always knew he was weak." "Then why?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for years. "Why did you choose him? Why did you give him the Ferrari? Why did you cover his crimes? Why did you try to destroy me for him?" Elijah looked at me. His eyes were cold, hard flints. "Because he needed me," Elijah said. You never needed me, Joshua. You fixed your own bike. You did your own homework. You got into Wharton on your own. You saved the company on your own." He sneered. "A father wants to be a hero. Mason let me be a hero. You just made me feel redundant." I stared at him. The truth was so simple, so pathetic, it almost made me laugh. He didn't love Mason more. He just loved how Mason's incompetence made him feel powerful. And he hated my competence because it made him feel small. "I didn't need you," I said softly. "But I wanted you. I wanted a father." Elijah looked away. "Well, you got a CEO title instead. Hope it keeps you warm at night." It does, I said. Better than a prison blanket. I hung up the phone. I stood up. Joshua! Elijah yelled through the glass, his voice muffled without the phone. Joshua! Get me a better lawyer. This public defender is an idiot. Joshua! I walked away. His voice faded into the background noise of the prison. That night I went to the office. It was late. The building was empty. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. I was alone. My parents were gone. My brother was gone. The family dinners, the holidays, the pretense of belonging. It was all gone. But as I looked at my reflection in the glass, I didn't see a victim. I saw a survivor. I had cut out the cancer. It hurt. God, it hurt. The wound was fresh and raw. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't being poisoned. I sat down at the desk. I opened the drawer. Inside was the black recording device. I held it in my hand for a moment. Then I took a hammer from my toolkit. I still kept my tools, a habit from my grandfather, and I smashed it. Smash, 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 until it was just plastic shards and twisted wire. I swept the pieces into the trash. Gabriel, I said into the intercom. I knew he was still there. He was always there. Yes, Joshua? Order pizza, I said, and bring the Q4 projections. We have work to do. Pepperoni. Double pepperoni. I leaned back in my chair. The silence in the office wasn't oppressive anymore. It was peaceful. I had lost a family, but I had saved myself. And looking at the skyline, I realized that was a trade I would make again in a heartbeat. The storm was over. Now I just had to rebuild the world. 8 months later, the air in the Sterling Logistics Tower tasted different. It didn't smell like fear and stale scotch anymore. It smelled like coffee, printer ink, and something that had been missing for a decade. Purpose. I stood in the elevator watching the numbers climb. 38, 39, 40. When the doors opened, I wasn't greeted by a hushed, terrified silence. The floor was buzzing. Analysts were arguing passionately about shipping routes in the conference room. Sales reps were laughing on the phones. Gabriel was waiting for me at my assistant's desk. He was wearing a new suit. Not expensive, just well-fitted, and his signature suspenders. He looked 5 years younger. Morning, Joshua, Gabriel said, handing me a tablet. Q2 numbers just finalized. We're up 18% year over year. And the retention rate? We haven't lost a single senior manager since the purge. That's because they know their salary isn't being siphoned off to pay for sports cars anymore, I said, taking the tablet. I scanned the green numbers. It was a beautiful sight. Not just the profit, but the stability. Also, Gabriel lowered his voice. The lawyer called. The asset seizure is complete. The auction is scheduled for this afternoon. I paused. The auction. The final physical dismantling of the Sterling family empire. Are you going? Gabriel asked. I have to, I said. I need to see it go. The last 8 months hadn't been a victory lap. They had been a grueling, muddy trench war. The media had a field day, of course. The fall of the House of Sterling. They painted it as a Shakespearean tragedy. They didn't know the half of it. I walked into my office. It was minimalist now. I had removed the heavy oak furniture, the Persian rugs, the hunting trophies Elijah loved so much. Now it was glass and steel, transparent. I sat down and opened the drawer where I kept the personal files, the ones that didn't belong in the company archives. The first file was marked State versus Sterling. The trial had been a circus. Elijah had tried everything. He fired 3 different defense teams. He tried to plead insanity, claiming the stress of leadership had broken his mind. Ironic, considering he tried to pin that exact label on me. But the recording was damning. And once the forensic accountants started digging, they found more than just the pension theft. They found tax evasion. They found bribes paid to zoning commissioners. They found a history of corruption that went back 20 years. Elijah was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. No parole for the first 12. Mason broke faster than cheap glass. As soon as the handcuffs clicked, he started talking. He gave up his bookie. He gave up the loan sharks. He gave up Elijah. He testified that he was coerced, manipulated by a domineering father. It was a pathetic display, but it worked partially. He got 5 years in minimum security, with a stipulation for mandatory addiction treatment. And then there was the file marked Victoria Sterling. My mother. She hadn't been charged. Elijah had been careful to keep her name off the official documents. She was just the beneficiary of the lifestyle, not the architect of the fraud. But in the court of public opinion, and in the reality of her finances, she was destitute. I closed the drawer. It was time to go to the auction. The auction house was in the city center, a place where the failures of the rich were sold to the highest bidder. The room was packed. Vultures in Italian suits, looking for a bargain on the bones of my childhood. I stood in the back wearing sunglasses. I didn't want to be recognized. Lot 42, the auctioneer announced. A 2023 Rolls-Royce Phantom, custom interior, barely driven. Elijah's car, the symbol of his power. The car he used to intimidate union leaders, the car he sat in while he told me I was a disappointment. Bidding started at $200,000. Climbed fast. A tech CEO from Silicon Valley bought it for $450,000. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. It was just a car. It wasn't a throne. It was just metal and leather. Lot 45, the auctioneer continued. A Lamborghini Aventador. Yellow. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. It was hideous. A monument to bad taste and unearned wealth. It sold for a fraction of what Mason had paid for it. Then came the house, the estate, the place where I grew up, the place where I hid in the garage to build furniture while my family threw galas I wasn't invited to. It was bought by a developer. He was talking loudly on his phone near me. Yeah, we're gonna bulldoze it. The land is worth more than the structure. Put up 20 luxury condos. Bulldoze it. Good. I turned to leave. I had seen enough. The physical artifacts of my trauma were being scattered to the wind. Joshua. The voice was brittle, thin. I froze. I turned around. Standing near the exit, clutching a knockoff designer bag, was Victoria. She looked shrunken. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by department store separates that didn't quite fit. Her hair, usually dyed a fierce blonde, was showing gray roots. "Hello, Mother," I said. She stepped closer, her eyes darting around to see if anyone was watching us. I didn't think you'd come. I came to say goodbye to the house," I said. "They sold it for nothing," she whispered, a flash of her old indignation appearing. "That developer. He has no idea about the imported marble in the foyer." "It doesn't matter anymore," I said. She looked at me, and her face crumpled. "Joshua, I'm staying in a studio apartment. In Queens. The stipend from the trust. The lawyers took almost all of it to defend your father. You have a roof over your head," I said. "That's more than most people have." "I'm your mother," she hissed, grabbing my arm. Her grip was weak. "You're the CEO. You're rich. You could help me. Just a small allowance. So I can live with some dignity." "Dignity?" I removed her hand from my arm. "You want dignity? Go get a job. Work a reception desk. Retrain. Do something of value." "I'm 60 years old," she cried. "I've never worked a day in my life." "I know," I said. "And look where it got you." I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a check. I had written it that morning. It wasn't a small amount, but it wasn't a fortune. It was enough for 6 months of rent and food. "This is it," I said, handing it to her. "This is the final transaction. Do not call the office. Do not come to the building. If you do, security will treat you like a trespasser." She looked at the check. Her eyes went wide at the number, then narrowed. It wasn't enough to buy her way back into society, and she knew it. "You're cold," she said. "Just like your father." "No," I said, leaning in close. "Elijah was hot. He burned everything he touched because he needed to feel powerful. I'm not cold, Mother. I'm just solid. And I'm done being fuel for your fire." I walked away. I left her standing there, clutching the check, watching the developer sign the papers to demolish her life. The drive to the federal penitentiary took 2 hours. It was located upstate, surrounded by gray hills and razor wire. This was the meeting I had been dreading. But it was also the one I needed. I checked in. The guards searched me. I walked through the heavy steel doors. The visiting room was loud, filled with the murmur of conversations and the static of radios. I sat at booth 14. 5 minutes later, the door on the other side opened. Elijah walked in. He was wearing a beige jumpsuit. He had lost weight. His skin was sallow, deprived of the golf course sun. But his eyes were the same. Arrogant, defiant. He sat down and picked up the phone. "You look terrible," he said. I laughed. I actually laughed. "Hello to you too, Dad." "Don't call me that," he snapped. "A son doesn't put his father in a cage. A criminal goes to a cage," I corrected. "I just turned on the lights." He glared at me. "You think you've won? You think running that company is a prize? It's a burden, Joshua. It will eat you alive. You don't have the killer instinct. The Sharks, the Ryans and Lukes of the world. They'll smell your morality and they'll tear you apart." "Ryan and Luke are gone," I said. "I bought them out last month, with the profits from the Q1 surge." Elijah blinked. He didn't know. Information inside was scarce. "I restructured the board," I continued. "Julian is chairman. Uncle David is head of the audit committee. We're boring now, Elijah. We're steady, reliable, profitable." "Boring," he sneered. "Sterling Logistics was an empire. It was feared. It was a piggy bank for your ego," I said. "And now it's a business." I watched him. I looked for a crack, a sign of remorse, a sign that he understood why he was sitting there. "How's Mason?" he asked suddenly. "He's in a halfway house in Ohio," I said. "Part of his plea deal. He's working at a landscaping company, mowing lawns." Elijah winced. The thought of his golden child pushing a mower hurt him more than the prison sentence. "He was meant for greatness," Elijah whispered. "He was meant to be a person," I said. "You tried to make him a monument. You crushed him under the weight of your expectations. And you enabled his worst instincts because you saw yourself in him." "And what did I see in you?" Elijah asked, his voice dripping with venom. Why could I never look at you and feel pride?" This was it. The question I had asked myself since I was 5 years old. "Tell me," I said. "I really want to know." Elijah leaned forward, his breath fogging the glass. "Because you didn't need me," he said. Mason was a mess. He needed me to fix his grades, his cars, his debts. Every time I saved him, I was God. I was the patriarch. You fixed your own scraped knees. You did your own taxes. You succeeded despite me. Every time you walked into a room with your quiet competence, you made me feel unnecessary." He sat back, looking small and bitter. "A narcissist can't love something he can't control," he muttered. "And I could never control you, Joshua. I tried to break you. God knows I tried. The funeral of your career. That board meeting. It was supposed to be the end. If I couldn't own you, I had to destroy you." I sat there, absorbing the confession. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about me not being good enough. It was about me being too good to be a victim. "Thank you," I said. Elijah looked confused. "For what?" "For confirming that it was never my fault." I stood up. "Where are you going?" Elijah asked, a flash of panic in his eyes. "We have 20 minutes left. Joshua, I need money for the commissary. The food here is inedible." "Work for it," I said. "I heard the laundry detail pays 12 cents an hour. It'll teach you the value of $1. "Joshua!" he screamed, slamming the phone against the receiver. "You ungrateful little." I hung up my phone. I turned my back on him. I walked toward the heavy steel doors. Behind me, I could see him mouthing obscenities, banging on the glass. A man trapped in the prison of his own making long before the state locked him up. I walked out into the sunlight. The air was crisp. I took a deep breath. For the first time in 34 years, I was an orphan, and I had never felt more alive. 3 months later, the company holiday party was held in the main warehouse. Not a ballroom, not a hotel. The warehouse. I wanted it there. I wanted the smell of cardboard and diesel and hard work. Tables were set up between the towering rows of pallets. Fairy lights were strung from the rafters. A local band was playing on a makeshift stage. 3,000 employees were there. Drivers, packers, accountants, executives. Mixing. Eating tacos from a food truck. I stood on the mezzanine level looking down at the crowd. "Quite a view," a voice said beside me. It was Uncle David. He was holding a beer. He looked relaxed, something I hadn't seen in him when Elijah was around. "It is," I agreed. "You know," David said, leaning on the railing, "your grandfather used to throw parties like this. Before the IPO, before the Rolls-Royces. He knew everybody's name." "I'm trying to learn them," I said. "I'm up to about 500. "You're doing a good job, Joshua," David said. He turned to me, his face serious. "I should have stood up for you sooner. That day in the boardroom, I knew Elijah was crossing a line, but I was scared. He had a way of making you feel like without him, the sky would fall." "The sky is still there," I said, pointing up at the skylights. "Yeah," David smiled. "It is. And hey, that scholarship fund you set up? The college fund for the employees' kids. Using the recovered assets." I nodded. "The union rep told me today that 3 of his guys cried when they heard about it. Their kids are going to go to school because of the money Elijah tried to steal." "Inheritance isn't what you leave in a bank account," I said, thinking of the letter my grandmother had left me. "Not money, but advice. It's what you leave in people." Gabriel walked up to us, holding a microphone. "Time for the speech, boss," he grinned. I took the mic. The music faded. The room went quiet. 3,000 faces turned up toward me. Not with fear. Not with suspicion. With expectation. I looked at them. I saw the families. I saw the kids running around. I saw the salary checks that put food on their tables. "I won't keep you long," I said, my voice echoing through the vast space. "I just want to say one thing. For a long time, this company was run like a kingdom. Decisions were made to protect the crown, not the people." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. "That ends with me," I said firmly. "We aren't a family. I know corporations like to say we're a family, but families are complicated. Families can be dysfunctional. Families can hurt you." I paused. I thought of Elijah in his cell. I thought of Victoria in her studio apartment. "We are a team," I said. "And on a team you earn your spot. You watch each other's backs. And you share the wins. This year, thanks to your hard work, we recovered from the brink of disaster. So, effective immediately, every employee in this building is receiving a 10% bonus." The roar that went up was deafening. It wasn't polite applause. It was a guttural cheer of relief and joy. I watched them hug each other. I watched a father lift his daughter onto his shoulders. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Julian. He had come up the stairs quietly. "Your grandfather would be proud," Julian said. "You didn't just save the company, Joshua. You saved its soul." "I had help," I said, looking at him and Gabriel and David. This was my family. Not the one I was born into, but the one I chose. The one that was forged in fire and ink and the hard truth. I walked down the stairs and into the crowd. I shook hands. I ate tacos. I listened to stories about sick kids and new houses and dreams. I wasn't the lonely king in the tower anymore. I was Joshua, and for the first time that was enough. As I drove home that night, in my Porsche, not a Rolls-Royce, I took the long way, along the coast. The ocean was dark and vast. I thought about the word crazy. My parents tried to weaponize it. They tried to tell the world I was broken because I refused to bend to their sickness. They called my integrity insanity. They called my boundaries violence. It's a terrifying thing when the people who are supposed to protect you become the ones you need protection from. It makes you question your own reality. It makes you check the mirror for cracks. But standing in that boardroom, playing that tape, I realized something fundamental. Sanity isn't about being numb. It isn't about going along to get along. Sanity is the refusal to participate in your own destruction. I pulled over. I got out of the car and stood by the railing, listening to the waves crash against the rocks. I am 35 years old. I have scars. I have a family tree that looks like a crime scene. But I am free. I have a job I love. I have friends I trust. And I have the absolute certainty that I will never, ever let anyone make me feel small again. That's my story. I walked into a boardroom to lose my job, and I walked out with my life back. If you take anything away from this, let it be this: blood is biology, but loyalty is a choice. We are taught from a young age that we owe our families everything. We are told to forgive, to forget, to endure abuse because it's family. But a toxic relationship is toxic, whether it's with a stranger or your own father. You have the right to fire your parents. You have the right to divorce your siblings. You have the right to protect your peace, your mental health, and your future from the people who share your DNA. It wasn't the money that saved me. It wasn't the recording. It was the moment I accepted that losing them was better than losing myself. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with a family member to save yourself? Did you have to choose between their approval and your own sanity? Drop a good in the comments if you believe that boundaries are necessary for a healthy life. Or share your story. Let's remind each other that we aren't crazy for demanding respect. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourselves. You are worth fighting for.